holding her books and made her way to the main door but stopped seeing 𝐘𝐨𝐮. Why are you ignoring my calls? He asked, holding her hand. Wine pulled away her hand. I'm not ignoring. She looked away. 𝐘𝐨𝐮 stared at her head to toe. Today she had her hair done nicely and was wearing makeup, while the glimmer in her eyes said on the story. This was unusual as she would lazily go to the university barely combing her hair. Since you got shot and admitted in the hospital, I have been trying to spend some time with you, but you don't have time for me, he complained. Wine frowned and fixed her gaze on him. I don't think we are that close. I am already late. She glanced at her wristwatch and was about to walk past him, but he held her arm. I am your fiancé, Wine. You are not 𝐘𝐨𝐮. Grandpa just wants this to happen. We aren't engaged and I haven't agreed to it. He pursed his lips and released her arm. Do you like someone else? Thane's poker face flashed before her eyes. 𝐘𝐨𝐮, I have told you several times I had 6 exes, 2 current boyfriends and dozens of crushes. She scratched her eyebrow and spoke. You have told me this story many times. Do you think I'll believe this? She rolled her eyes. I don't care if you don't believe it. I just told you out of sympathy because I know how possessive and bossy you are. You wouldn't want a playgirl. She tried her best to make him believe her lies. What if I tell all these things to your grandpa and brother? She smirked. Then I'll put it all on you. Grandpa and brother will always believe me. 𝐘𝐨𝐮 let out a sigh. She turned around to leave. Anyways, who is that guy out there near your car? That handsome? He's my bodyguard thing. He hummed while Wine saw him coming inside. I'll go and see Grandpa. Wine smirked as a thought crossed her mind. She would never get a better chance to prove herself to 𝐘𝐨𝐮. Miss Wine, Wine moved close to him and held his collar, taking him off guard. Play along, she whispered and smashed her lips on his. 𝐘𝐨𝐮 stared at them with disdain. Thane's eyes widened in surprise, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he found himself responding, his heart betraying him as it fluttered at the feeling of her soft lips. The kiss was brief, but it left him reeling. Sorry about this. She pulled away and whispered with flushed cheeks. 𝐘𝐨𝐮 clenched his jaw and walked into Grandpa's room. Wine ran out while Thane followed her with blank mind. At university, Wine arrived at the university in awkward silence. Thane had his poker face on as if nothing happened. Everyone in the university would turn to look at them as Thane followed her. Many of them asked if he was a transfer student, her brother or cousin. Wine was still surprised at her audacity. How come she became so bold? She was still stuck in the kiss while Thane was no different. His heart was betraying him and he knew it very well, but all the time he reminded himself why he was here. Once he accomplishes his goal, everything will come to an end, yet his mind was drawn to the moment their lips met. Now Wine was sitting in a cafe with her friends while Thane was sitting at a corner table, looking around casually. Wine could feel his burning gaze on her, but the moment she looks at him, she finds him staring at an invisible point. She shrugged her thoughts, thinking she might be hallucinating. Wine, I can't take my eyes off that guard thing. This handsome and charming person deserves to be the boss but guard, she said, staring at him with admiration. Wine kicked her leg under the table. Shut up, take your eyes off him. Angela glared at her, rubbing her leg. Stop with your possessiveness. Every other girl is staring at him and I bet he is used to these cases. It doesn't bother him, see? Wine looked around and found everyone drooling over him. She clenched her jaw and shook her head. Hey, Wine, she said with a soft smile and sat in front of her. Oh God, did she buy some new jewelry and come to show off in front of me? She thought and forced a smile at Roxy. Hi. In which department does your brother study? Wine chuckled. My brother runs business, he doesn't study. I am asking about him. She pointed at Hank. He's not my brother, he's my bodyguard. She shook her head. Roxy smiled. I see, I admire beautiful things a lot. She stared at him. I feel like I have seen him somewhere. Where would you have seen him? Roxy shrugged her shoulders. I don't know. Let me say hi to him. She said and walked to Thane's table and waved at him. He passed her a cold stare and looked away. Why does this girl have to hit on everyone? She said through gritted teeth. Today was Wine's classmate's birthday and she had invited everyone. After getting permission from Grandpa, Wine arrived at the venue with him. All the way Wine didn't stop talking out of her bubbly nature. She wanted to see how his smile looked, but as usual he had his poker face on. Thane couldn't help but admire her. He felt a strange pull towards her that made his heart flutter. He tried hard to ignore her all the way and reminded himself that he was there just for his revenge. The wine was walking ahead while 𝐊𝐤 was following her close. "Hey, 𝐊𝐤," she turned around to face him with a wide smile. "How do I look?" She trilled, holding her gown. 𝐊𝐤 pressed his lips to hold back his smile at her childishness. He just nodded. Her smile instantly disappeared. "It wouldn't cost you if you just said, 'I look beautiful.'" She rolled her eyes and slapped him lightly on the chest. 𝐊𝐤's heart skipped a beat. She turned around and walked ahead as Angela was calling her out. Wine met everyone and they all couldn't stop themselves from complimenting her. 𝐊𝐤 stood right behind her. "You both look so beautiful together, Wine." 𝐊𝐤 pretended not to hear it, while Wine's face flushed. Angela went to bring drinks when Wine heard his deep voice near her ear. Breathtakingly beautiful. Her heart thumped quietly against her chest, feeling his hot breath on her neck. She turned to him and saw a smile playing on his lips, but he wasn't looking at her. Wine turned her head and saw Roxy smiling at him. She pursed her lips. So that was for her. She thought bitterly and glared at Roxy, who approached them. Angela also arrived in the meantime and handed her the glass while Roxy ignored them both and began talking with 𝐊𝐤. Wine looked at her. Angela nudged her arm and pointed at 𝐊𝐤 and Roxy. Wine's blood boiled seeing Roxy leaned and whispering something into 𝐊𝐤's ears, while 𝐊𝐤 smiled widely. "Let's go," she said to Angela and dragged her away, escaping from 𝐊𝐤's gaze. "Wine, you have fallen for 𝐊𝐤, aren't you?" Wine nodded, pursing her lips. "You're playing with fire, Wine. Your grandpa and brother will kill 𝐊𝐤 if they get to know this. Don't make problems for yourself and him." "I don't want to talk about it yet, Angela." Wine lost interest in everything suddenly. Her heart felt overwhelmed by everything. "I want to use washroom. I'll come with you. No, I'm good." Angela nodded hesitantly. Wine made her way out to the pool area for fresh air instead of going to the washroom. She fished out her phone from her purse and saw the time when she heard a voice behind her. "Hey, Wine, you look so beautiful today." "Thank you, 𝐬𝐤," she said with a smile. 𝐬𝐤 stepped forward and held her hand. "Let's have some special time together." Wine's heart sank. She swiftly pulled out her hand and walked past him, but he held her arm. "What's wrong with you, 𝐬𝐤? You were never like this," she yelled with disgust. Her pulse fell in her feet before 𝐬𝐤 could part his lips to speak. 𝐊𝐤's blow sent him to the ground. Wine stared at them with wide eyes as 𝐊𝐤 was continuously hitting him. 𝐬𝐤's friends came out of hidden spots. She heard them yelling it was a prank. Everyone came out hearing the commotion. It was a prank. 𝐊𝐤's blow didn't let him complete. "Wine, go and stop 𝐊𝐤. He might kill him." Wine's trance broke. She ran to 𝐊𝐤 and held his arm. "Stop it, you'll kill him." 𝐊𝐤 moved her away, glaring at 𝐬𝐤 with bloodshot eyes. He was about to hit 𝐬𝐤 again, but Wine came in front of him. "Stop it," she said, holding him. 𝐊𝐤 stopped and stared at her hair. He held her close, breathing heavily. Wine looked over her shoulder at 𝐬𝐤, who was groaning in pain, while his friends helped him stand. "I'm sorry, Wine. It was a prank to scare you." "I should be sorry, 𝐬𝐤." She was about to move to him, but 𝐊𝐤's hold tightened. "Leave me." He looked down at her with a calm face. "Let's go, Miss Wine," he said softly and dragged her, holding her hand. Wine tried hard to release from his grip as he bent to pick up her purse. "Leave me, can't you hear?" She yelled at him, but he dragged her to the car and threw her purse inside. "Get in." "Don't order me, you almost killed him." He said it was a prank. "Why didn't you stop?" She spoke furiously. "He touched you. Your safety is my first priority," he said calmly, still holding her hand. "You're also touching me." She raised her hand. "I can touch you. You're my responsibility. Now get in the car." "I won't," he nodded. "Okay, as you say." He opened the door and lifted her in his arms. Wine was too stunned to speak. He sat her in the car and locked it. As soon as he started the ignition, Wine snapped to reality. "Show your goddamn possessiveness to Roxy. Stop the car." He pretended not to hear. She began crying and dialed Grandpa's number. "Hello, Grandpa. This 𝐊𝐤 has beaten up my friend so badly and dragged me out of the party." She cried and complained to Grandpa. Grandpa consoled her and told her not to cry. After talking to Grandpa, she still didn't stop crying as 𝐊𝐤's smiling face with Roxy flashed before her eyes. Soon they arrived at the mansion. Van got out of the car and ran inside while Chen followed her holding her purse. Wine. He stood followed by 𝐘𝐨𝐮. Brother, you're back, she happily said and threw her arms around him. You bloody god, what do you think of yourself? Why did you hit her friend and drag her out of the party? He yelled at Chen. 𝐘𝐨𝐮, who are you to yell at him? Grandpa also came out. Chen, can you explain it? Miss Wine is my responsibility and that person touched her. He was forcing her so I couldn't hold back. Grandpa averted his gaze at Wine. She nodded with a lower head. He just wanted to do a prank. Even if it was a prank, it was disgusting. You may leave him. He nodded, keeping her purse on the coffee table and turned around. Wait, Grandpa. Tell 𝐘𝐿𝐮 to apologize to him. He insulted him. Everyone stared at her with surprise, including him. 𝐘𝐿𝐮 clenched his jaw. Don't even think. He walked away. Grandpa patted her head and walked into his bedroom while Lance went to answer a call. Sorry for 𝐘𝐿𝐮's behavior. That doesn't mean I'm not mad at you, she said with a pout and walked away. Hank let out a sigh. He didn't understand why he lost it seeing Zetch holding her arm. He wanted to rip off his hand. Few days later, Wine was still ignoring him. At first, Hank thought this distance between them was good for them, but then her silence annoyed him. He wanted to hear her voice. He tried to start a conversation, but she would hum in response. He longed for her to talk to the university and then to home. Wine didn't even know why she was mad at him. He wasn't committed to her. But then Angela's voice rang in her ears and she didn't want to get him in trouble, so she decided it was good for them to be distant. It was hard for both of them to ignore each other's presence. Now she was in the shopping mall with him. Chen was following her closely behind, holding tons of shopping bags, while Wine was just roaming around to annoy him and bought bundles of clothes, accessories, shoes, decoration pieces, and many more things. Now Wine was eating ice cream looking around when her phone buzzed in her purse, which was hanging on Theo's shoulder. He shifted all the bags into one hand and took out her phone. It's your grandpa. He held out the phone in front of her. Answer the call. He answered the call and she gestured for him to bring it to her ear. Theo adjusted the purse on his shoulder and held the phone against her ear. Yes, Grandpa, we are just about to return. Grandpa said something from the other side. She hummed in response and declined the call. Theo kept the phone in her purse while Wine burst into laughter. He passed her a questioning gaze. You were wearing it like girls. She giggled. Theo smiled and wiped her mouth. Give me these bags. Now I can carry them. Okay, then give me the purse. She took it from him. I hope you're not mad at me anymore. They began walking to the exit. No, but I'll break your bones if I see you around, Roxy. You're my guard, so don't wander around. She slightly punched his arm. Theo chuckled. Your smile is so beautiful. I want you to talk often. Your voice is soothing, cool to my ears. He stared at her intensely. Her face flushed crimson. They silently walked out while all the way home, Wine's blabbering didn't stop. Time skip. Wine was sitting in the cafe lost in the thoughts. As a few days ago, Grandpa talked to her about 𝐘𝐿𝐮. He wanted to fix their engagement despite her denial. He announced his final decision. She was heartbroken as Grandpa didn't consider her feelings. Lance also strictly told her to mentally prepare herself for it. Her feelings for Theo grew stronger. Theo was muddled up in his own thoughts and worries. As per his plan, he should hand Wine to the enemies and torment Grandpa and Lance. But after realizing his feelings for her, he couldn't do it. He decided to back off from everything. All he wanted was Wine in his life. She became so important to him that he even forgot his father's revenge. He was willing to choose her instead of revenge. Now Roxy sat in front of Wine, causing her to frown. I want to talk to you. Please, Roxy, I'm not in the mood now, she said lazily. This is important. You have to know his name. Wine passed her a confused glance. Didn't I say I have seen him somewhere? Here he is, came Theo, the owner of 𝐘𝐨𝐻 Enterprises. She held her phone in front of Wine and showed her some photos of Theo in his company. These are not edited. My cousin works in his company. Last year I went out of the city and met her in her office. I had seen Theo there. You can have a background check about him if you don't believe me. Wine sat stunned. She knew there was something that Theo was hiding as she overheard his conversation on the phone call, but she couldn't understand why he was hiding his identity. Don't trust him so much. She stood flipping her hair. 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐬. Wine waved at her in a trance. She stood and made her way out while 𝐊𝐤𝐬 followed her. Today 𝐊𝐤𝐬 was driving the car. She sat in the passenger seat. He began driving while Wine was silently staring out of the window. Is something bothering you? She averted her gaze to him. Why are you hiding your identity? What's your aim? She asked with a blank face. He pursed his lips and went silent. I want to revenge my father. Your brother and grandpa killed him. The pain in his voice didn't go unnoticed by her. But you have led me astray from my purpose, he said helplessly. Wine held his hand. 𝐊𝐤𝐬, please go away from here. If grandpa or brother discover your identity, they won't let you live. Please go. She said in a low tone. He brought her hand to his heart. I live but with you. I didn't have any purpose to live other than this revenge, but I lost it. Now my only purpose is to spend the rest of my life with you. That's not possible, her voice broke. Grandpa wants me to marry 𝐘𝐨𝐮. My will means nothing to him. Tears rolled down her eyes and stopped the car and fixed his gaze on her. I don't want them to hurt you. Please go back to where you have come from. He leaned to wipe her tears and shook his head. Never, he said firmly. She wrapped her arms around him. We can't be together. He caressed her hair. Stop crying. I always thought you were brave and bold, but here you are crying like a kid. It's because of this stupid heart. She sniffed and pulled out. He smiled, kissing her forehead, and drove the car. Wine composed herself as she didn't want anyone to suspect her. 𝐊𝐤𝐬 held her hand. I'll make everything fine. He brought her hand to his lips. She smiled, feeling light. Just a few minutes passed when the car came to a halt. Both of them frowned, seeing 4 cars blocking the road. Suddenly, a guy knocked on Wine's window. She gasped, clutching her chest. The guy gestured for her to open it, then shook his head in denial. He might need help. She lowered the window. Without making any noise, keep away your gun. He pointed his gun at Wine while one more guy appeared at 𝐊𝐤𝐬's side. He squeezed Wine's cold hand, lowering the window of his side and throwing the gun in the back seat. Come out, someone is here to talk to you. Let's go, Wine. She nodded, still in shock, and both of them hopped out of the car. 𝐊𝐤𝐬 came to Wine's side and held her hand. She grabbed his arm, sticking to his side. Han, he said, seeing the familiar person getting out of the car. 𝐊𝐤𝐬, long time no see. Wine was trying hard to hide behind 𝐊𝐤𝐬. I see, the girl is here. Come on, hand her over to me as per our deal. He shook his head. Don't even think about it, Han. I cancelled the deal long ago. He tightened his grip on her hand. This is not how it works. Don't force me to act rashly. I'll make your death an example to the world if you try to glance at her, he said coldly through gritted teeth. Han chuckled and opened his mouth to speak, but his phone rang, grabbing his attention. He answered the call and stood still, hearing the person from the other side. Okay, Dad. He declined the call and smiled. I'm leaving you, but this doesn't end here. 𝐊𝐤𝐬 stared at him blankly. Han gestured for his men to get into the car. They all got into their cars and drove off. 𝐊𝐤𝐬 turned to Wine, who was still trembling. They're gone, he covered her face gently. 𝐊𝐤𝐬, they are dangerous people. They belong to mafia. She held his hands and spoke anxiously. So do I. I'm also a mafia. She stared at him with surprise. I'm sorry for hiding it. He shook her hand. That doesn't matter to me. I just want you to be safe. He pulled her into a hug and kissed her hair. Let's go, she said, and turned around, but froze, seeing Grandpa, Lance, and 𝐘𝐨𝐮 coming towards them. You have deceived me, he muttered through gritted teeth. 𝐘𝐨𝐮 and Lance pointed their guns at 𝐊𝐤𝐬. 𝐊𝐤𝐬 cursed the moment he left his gun in the car. Grandpa, he cut in. Shut up, come over here. I didn't expect you will do this. You must pay for it, Wine. He growled. Wine stood in front of 𝐊𝐤𝐬, shaking her head in denial. Go away, Wine. Before Wine could speak, Lance grabbed her arm and pushed her towards Grandpa. Grandpa held her wrist. Leave me, she cried, wiggling in his grip. 𝐘𝐨𝐮 stepped forward to 𝐊𝐤𝐬. You had eyes on my fiancé. You will also die today just like your father, and no one will know it. 𝐊𝐤𝐬 clenched his jaw and stepped close to 𝐘𝐨𝐮, ready to throw a blow at him, but in a blink of an eye, Wine released her wrist from Grandpa and sprinted towards 𝐊𝐤𝐬. The gunshot rang out loud and piercing. She felt a searing pain in her neck and collapsed on the ground. Wine, he screamed and held her in his arms. Grandpa's heart sank, seeing the blood gushing from her neck. 𝐊𝐤𝐬's hands trembled. Hold on, Wine, please. Before he could process what was happening, 3 more gunshots rang out. Pain exploded in his chest and he fell beside her. Wine tried to speak, but her words didn't come out. Then's vision blurred, but he managed to grasp her hand. Tears rolled down their eyes. Van's lips moved soundlessly. They stared into each other's eyes with a depth of emotions they couldn't convey. Before closing his eyes, Then saw Lance lift Van in his arms and walked away. 3 years later. 3 years ago, Then woke up in his mansion. His mom told him that his man brought him here, and Van passed away. Then couldn't believe it. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol. Seeing his mother's sickness and sister's worries, he came back to life but empty from the inside. He immersed himself in his business. Now Then was sitting on the chair in the hospital in front of his friend, scratching the edge of the desk. You seem lost. Then leaned on the chair and fixed his gaze on an invisible point. I just can't stop thinking about her. His voice held agony. He felt a lump in his throat. Ethan nodded understanding. It's been 3 years, hasn't it? Since that day. Yes, 3 years. 3 years of agony. I can't believe that Vine didn't make it. My heart says she's alive. I can't accept that she's gone. His voice barely above a whisper. Ethan held his hand. Sometimes facing the past is the only way to heal. Look at your condition. What have you become? No one would say you are the same thing that was 3 years ago. This is not how it works. You have killed him, wiped all his family. Isn't that enough? He said in a low tone. Then moved away his hand. You want me to accept she is dead, but no, I will never accept it. She is still alive. She is alive in me, in my heart, and me still breathing is the witness that she is alive. He spoke firmly, staring right into his eyes. Ethan smiled slightly. Then why didn't you into her house? I know I will not hesitate to kill them. He looked away. Ethan chuckled. Or do you fear you won't see her there and get to know she is dead? Then passed him a glare. Ethan shook his head. All right, leave it. Why do you always come to the hospital? Come to my house, meet my wife and son. Your mind will divert. Then noted before he could respond. A series of loud cries and screams echoed through the corridor. His heart skipped a beat for some reason. What's going on? Both of them stood. There's a girl who comes here for treatment. Sometimes she has episodes triggered by trauma. She sees someone or something that reminds her of her past and she reacts violently. Ethan made his way out while Then followed suit. As they approached the source of the commotion, Then's heart raced. They turned the corner to find a room in disarray. Medical staff was trying to calm a girl who was throwing things. Her screams filled with raw pain and anger. Then's breath caught in his throat. Wine? He whispered with wide eyes. Wine was in the midst of rage, hurling objects at 𝐘𝐨𝐿, who was standing in a corner. Get away from me, I hate you. Her eyes were wild, tears streaming down her face. Then took a step forward, his heart pounded. Wine? He called out louder this time. Her movements faltered, her gaze snapping to him. She stared at him in disbelief as if he were a ghost. Then she mumbled, dropping the object in her hand. He swiftly put her in his arms as her knees buckled and she was about to fall on the floor. She touched his face, making sure she wasn't dreaming. As soon as her gaze landed on 𝐘𝐨𝐿, her cries got louder once again. Then go away from here. They'll kill you, go away. She tried to push him, but he held her tightly. No one can do anything to me. She went limp in his arms while Ethan and 𝐘𝐨𝐿 were still in shock. Then lifted her and laid her on the bed while the doctor was examining her. What happened to her? Her vocal cords were damaged due to the bullet. Then pursed his lips and glared at 𝐘𝐨𝐿, who approached him. He threw a punch at 𝐘𝐨𝐿, taking him off guard. 𝐘𝐨𝐿 stumbled backward while Then pulled out his gun and pointed at him. Then stop it, you're scaring other people. Ethan held him back. Then looked around and kept the gun back. Lance entered the room with wide eyes, seeing Then. Then you're alive. What have you done to her? He growled. Then is not the right place to talk. Come to my cabin. He dragged Then and gestured for Lance to follow them. Ethan left them alone. Lance ran his fingers through his hair. That day we thought you died because we couldn't even find your body. When Vine woke up, she lost her voice. She wanted to know about you. We told her you were there. She used to have nightmares of that night. At midnight, she would scream, throwing things. Then we got her to the therapy sessions. It made her calm. Her treatment was going well, but when 𝐘𝐨𝐿 showed up, she became the same. Her voice is still raspy due to screaming and crying. Her vocal cords aren't healed. The pain in his voice didn't go unnoticed by 𝐊𝐤, but he couldn't care less. 𝐊𝐤, I beg you, please heal my sister. I need my sister back. Grandpa couldn't see her condition. He passed away due to heart failure. 𝐊𝐤 pursed his lips. He pulled out his gun and shot Lance in the leg. He groaned and stumbled backward. I'm taking her with me. He walked out while Ethan rushed in. Time skip. Wine's eyes fluttered open, her vision blurry as she tried to make sense of her surroundings. She turned her head slowly, feeling the exhaustion pressing her down. Her gaze landed on the figure standing by the window, his back turned on her. 𝐊𝐤, she whispered, her voice raspy and weak. He turned at the sound of her voice. Relief washed over him. Wine, you're awake. He rushed to her side, his hand gently cupping her cheek. Where am I? She tried to sit. Don't move too much, he said softly, adjusting the pillows behind her. You're in my house. She reached up, her fingers trembling as she touched his face, as if confirming he was real. I thought you were dead, she whispered. His eyes were filled with tears as he reached his hand to the scar on her neck. He caressed it with his thumb. I thought the same about you, but I couldn't accept it. I drowned myself at work, trying to forget the pain, but it never went away. Every day I prayed you were still alive. She whispered, tears streaming down her face. He leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss on her forehead. She closed her eyes, savoring the warmth of his touch. When I saw you in that room, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was like a miracle. Seeing you, now I feel I can finally breathe again. I have been haunted by the memories, by pain. She looked straight into his eyes. 𝐊𝐤 brushed a strand of hair from her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. I'll never let anything separate us again. I have wasted so much time and I don't want to waste another second, he said, looking deeply into her eyes. Wine smiled while 𝐊𝐤's lips also curled into a soft smile, his tears falling freely now. He leaned in slowly, capturing her lips in a tender kiss. It was a kiss filled with the love, pain and longing they carried for 3 years. Wine wiped his tears with her thumb, moving her lips in sense. They pulled out and rested their foreheads together, breathing in each other's presence. I'm never letting you go again. Wine noted her heart swelling with relief and joy. She rested her head on his chest. They stayed wrapped in each other's embrace, savoring the reunion they had longed for. And gently stroked her hair, his touch tender and soothing. Wine, my mom and sisters are coming to meet you soon. She stiffened slightly in his arms and pulled out. 𝐊𝐤 stared at her intently. Her gaze dropped to the bed, her fingers brushing against the scar on her neck. 𝐊𝐤, she bit her lips, unable to speak further. Then held her chin and lifted her face. What's wrong? I'm embarrassed. His heart ached at her words. Wine, you're beautiful. Nothing about you could ever change that. She shook her head, tears welling up again. But the scar, my voice, I feel so self-conscious. You deserve so much better than... He pressed a soft kiss to her lips before drilling down to her jaw. Every part of you is perfect to me, he whispered against the skin of her neck just above the scar. The scar, he kissed it gently, is the mark of your strength or everything you have survived. Wine shivered at the sensation, her breath hitched. 𝐊𝐤, his hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer. I love your voice. Every word you say is music to my ears. He kissed her neck again, lingering on the scar, his lips tender. You're everything I have ever wanted, Wine. Don't hide from me or anyone. Wine melted into his touch, her fears and insecurities dissolving under his loving caress. Thank you, 𝐊𝐤. Thank you for loving me, she whispered, her voice trembled with emotions. He smiled against her skin, his kisses growing more fervent as he trailed them along her collarbone. I'll always love you. Nothing will ever change that. Wine's hand found their way to his hair, her fingers tangled in the soft strands as she pulled him closer. 𝐊𝐤's kisses traveled back up to her lips, capturing them in a passionate embrace. You're my world, Wine, and I'll spend the rest of my life showing you just how much you mean to me. He spoke between the kiss and deepened the kiss, pouring their love and longing.